Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Crossing the Finish Line. I am your host, Cody Kaler. I'm the Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing over here at ANZ Trucking. Today is going to be all about produce. I have a very special guest who's going to be joining me, Mr. Danny Reyes. He is the carrier manager who handles all the produce for Sysco. Happens to be they are the largest food service company in America. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring on Danny. We can get into this. Danny, how's it going, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. It's nice weather out here in California. So I can't
Yeah. So you're in Salinas, right? So you're Monterey area. So you're right in the good old summer salad bowl.
Exactly, the hard produce.
Yeah. So shout out to a good friend of mine, Sunny Sharma, who's on right now. Good afternoon, buddy. So Danny, we can just hop right into this, buddy. So let's kind of talk about how you got your start into this industry, not just produce, but logistics as a whole.
So I graduated college in 2008. Right after that, that's when the whole housing market and everything crashed. Wasn't much out there. So I played a few places and started working for Alliance Shippers. I actually started in the accounting department for about a year and a half, 2 years. And then I kind of worked my way up in operations, fleet coordinator, being a dispatcher, learning the whole intermodal game. I was there for about 9 years. Then after that, I came over to Sysco. And then I was a salesperson for about a year and a half. And then actually moved their transportation team from Houston over to Salinas. Applied for it, and then I've been here ever since. So I've been here at Sysco for about 7 years. I've been in this position for about 5 years or so. So I've probably had about 15 years experience in transportation, intermodal, and then, last 5 years over the road stuff. So.
Love it. Most people, once it gets in your blood, you don't get out, man.
It's super hard to get out. I'm telling you, like I was looking at other places years ago, and I like it though. You get to deal with people from all over the country, different personalities, right? I love people's accents from the South, right? I got a few. I got a really good one who's in Georgia, another one in North Carolina. So those accents, I just want to laugh the whole time.
Love it. All right. Yeah, that's great. Sysco, that's huge companies. Your exposure to everything in logistics has got to be pretty massive. So,
it's humongous. So I'll just talk just a little bit, kind of like we do here. So the whole team's in Houston, our corporate office. There's about 12 on the team. We manage anywhere between like 9,000 and 10,000 loads a week. On the produce side, there's myself and I have another person helping me. So between two of us, we manage about 1,100 loads of produce a week.
That's a lot.
We only manage off the West Coast. So anything out of California, Arizona, Washington, Idaho. We're starting to get more out of Texas and Florida. But right now, currently, we're probably doing about 600 loads a week just out of California, going all over the U.S. We have about 75 distribution centers in the U.S. that we manage, besides Fresh Point that we just took that over managing about 6 months ago. And then we also manage Canada as well, but they're not as big. We're busy over here.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you guys got Canadian and Mexican, right? You got Mexico and Canada as well?
So we do Canada. We don't do Mexico just because of paperwork, cross-border.
Okay.
It could be a huge headache. So when we do order from our suppliers, they'll cross-dock it to the U.S. side. We'll pick it up what's on the U.S. side. But going into Canada, we actually do paperwork going into Canada. We have about 20 distribution centers in Canada. They're not as big as what we do here in the U.S., but we do have a footprint out there.
Yeah, and if anybody out there doesn't recognize Sysco, I can guarantee that you've eaten some of their product wherever you've gone. So, if you've eaten at a restaurant anywhere, you've eaten something from Sysco. So,
definitely, we're all over the place, and I know we're number one in the U.S. and Canada. We're number one in the world. We have a big footprint in Europe. I know we're huge in Panama. I think China and a few other countries up in Asia. We're also, getting bigger as well. So.
That's crazy. I didn't realize you guys were that big internationally.
Yeah, internationally, we're humongous. So I want to say like Ireland, we're number one, Panama, we're number one. And then there's a few other countries in Europe that we're probably like 2 or 3, but we're definitely growing out there.
That's crazy. So yeah, one of the big things that we always focus on at ANZ, just because we are so heavy in produce, is I love to just talk the difference in produce freight versus, traditional truckload freight. because there are so many nuances that go into produce that a lot of people, maybe first-time listeners or somebody who maybe is just used to traditional truckload just doesn't understand, right? So one of your main jobs is to onboard carriers, vet all the carriers and the brokers and everything. So what's some of the things that you look for in a carrier or a broker from a capability standpoint to make sure that they can handle produce, a hot load of, $200,000 worth of berries moving across the country on a team versus somebody who's looking just to move some cheese or deli or, something like that?
Yeah, so it's depends on lanes that we're looking for, right? A lot of it's experience. Honestly, we have almost two different versions of produce that we move. We have the easier loads, what I consider easy. Potatoes and onions, you can run them at 55, 60 degrees. You don't really have to worry about them. Most of them are 1-in-1s, right? So they're pretty easy. Then what I call is like the big league loads that are out of California or like Yuma, Arizona, 2-3 stop picks. You're having strawberries, you're having lettuce, broccoli, the whole shebang. So a lot of it is experience, just to see if they've held for other, companies or even just our straight suppliers that we deal with, right? If it's Taylor Farms or Driscoll, a lot of the time that we can manage strawberries and berries, you can pretty much manage anything because those are super hard to move. So that's one thing we look at. And let's say if it's someone kind of even newer who's probably moved like watermelons or, cantaloupes, things of that aren't as hard, or citrus, we'll start them off with some of the easier loads that we have, potatoes, onions, and then kind of work their way into the California or Yuma product. But yeah, it's a lot of its experience. A lot of people think produce is easy. It's not at all. I consider produce probably the hardest thing to move out there. And again, I'm biased because I'm in produce. But for a short while when I was during COVID, besides produce, I also managed the Northeast dry frozen. And the dry frozen, it was easy. Like 2 hours, you're loaded on the road, really don't have any issues. You're never moving locations. Produce is the complete opposite, right? Like you might have product in one location for 1 week, the next week the product somewhere else, have to make an adjustment and go down and get it. Besides the whole temperature issues, you have to make sure your reefer's running. It's only a couple years old, right? It can't be older than 5 years or 6 years. So there's a lot more maintenance when it comes to produce. And that's why I think some people don't realize you're not going to be loaded in 2 hours. Oftentimes it takes 5-6 hours for one pickup. You're going to have 2-3 picks on it. It's going to take a day and a half. So there's a lot of patience on there.
Yep.
And then after that, as a customer, you expect you still deliver on time, which it's demanding, but it's part of the business, right? The one thing about produce is there's shelf life. You only have a certain amount of days, right, to make sure we can get it to our customers. And 60% of our customers are restaurants. The other 40% is some type of entertainment, right? If it's schools, if it's prisons, if it's sporting events, if it's concerts, right? And honestly, living out here in Salinas, we have green lettuce year round for the most part. When I go somewhere else, I don't want to serve them yellow lettuce. That's not proper, right? So that's the biggest demand, right? Is getting there on time, getting there as soon as possible, putting teams on everything. Because if you're 1 day late, that's lost sales, and that's a lost day of selling the product, right? It's one less day of shelf life. So that's probably the most difficult thing is the drivers get beat up. And it's not even their fault 90% of the time because the pliers are holding you back. Sometimes it's our own dispatchers not having the right pickup number, or they want you to hold for 20 cases, just little things like that for a specialty product. And then we expect the truckers to be, Superman to get it there on time and nothing's, missing and nothing's warm. So,
yeah. And another thing that a lot of people don't realize is the lead time difference, right? So like, a lot of times when you're moving, everything that we're moving that's not produce, you can expect like a 10 to 14 day lead time, sometimes 7. Produce, man, you're lucky if you get 2 to 3 days. Like a lot of that, it's 24 hours, So, and to your point, the shed's moving. That's got to be one of the biggest pains in the butts because you can get a tender and you're like, all right, got 2 days on this tender, right? We'll get it on a Monday, start loading on a Wednesday, and it's a completely different load come Wednesday morning. So
exactly.
It's so crazy. But a lot of people also, I haven't been in produce as long as you have, but I've been in produce for the last 6 years. And like a lot of people don't realize a lot of that stuff outside of your hardy stuff, like you mentioned, your potatoes, your onions, your apples, that stuff's like harvested that day, right? Like it's that morning that they're out there picking that, and it's got to get cooled and then onto your truck. And most of the time, all your loading, you mentioned some of the more difficult ones, Driscoll, Taylor Farms, you can be there till midnight loading. But if you don't check in, if you check in after 2 p.m., you're never going to get a spot. So like, like, it's crazy. I talk about it all the time. Anytime I have a chance to talk about produce and the difficulties of it, I like to educate everybody on it because it's not for the faint of heart. I mean, it's, you brought up shelf life, like the storage, the safety stock at NEDC. Produce is always the most shrinked commodity out of everything, right? Because berries only last for so long. As soon as you pick produce, it's dying, right? So, and you can't serve a restaurant. Like if I go to a restaurant and I got yellow lettuce or wilted berries or something, I'm probably not coming back. I'm going to
exactly.
So it's so different than everything else. Shout out to Erica Hamilton. Happy Tuesday. Tim Hardaway, very perishable, definitely hard to move. Time is limited. Absolutely true. If you get a flat tire on a produce load, you better start checking with your insurance because there's a good chance you might get a claim on it. You get a flat tire on a load of corn pops, you're totally fine. But it's so different. A lot of people don't realize that, and it's I don't want to call it a niche because the produce market is huge, right? But you brought up something very accurate, and I hear this a lot from our customers. If you can move produce, you can move anything in food and bev, right? So as soon as they find out that you move produce and you do a good job after a little while, most people are like, hey, you want to come take a look at some of this other RFP stuff. And I know Sonny Sharma, I know he's watching, he moves produce in some of the more difficult meat and cheese loads. So he feels our pain too, but but it keeps you on your toes though, man. I mean, it's average. I think I was on the DAT podcast and we were talking about average picks on produce loads versus, traditional truckload, and average picks on produce loads, it's a little over 3, and you compare that to normal truckload, which your average pick is just barely over 1. So it's crazy. It's so much different than traditional truckload, but it's fun. It keeps you on your toes. You got to be really good at claims too. You got to be really, really smart when it comes to, you learn to read reefer downloads real quick moving produce. So
no, definitely. You definitely do. Like I said, if you can run produce, you can run anything. It's almost, I trust you more on every other load out there. We start like dry or frozen, work your way up because it's a totally different monster.
Oh yeah.
And like you said earlier, like you can have it planned, 24 hours in advance, and that morning of or morning afternoon, right? It's totally different location, different product. Now you're waiting for the next day. It's definitely hard.
And why is that? So I always just attribute that to product availability, right? So if I'm a buyer and I got to get X amount of romaine, maybe Taylor didn't have a great harvest that morning, so I got to buy from Taylor and from Church or whatever it is. But what causes a lot of that?
A lot of it's just a product, right? Everybody has customers, and a lot of things we do is contracted. We do buy on top of that, right? But a lot of it's contracted. But let's just say it's just bad product when they don't have product that day, right? So they got to go to a different field, a different location to get that picked up, or at least, cover their contracts they have with us, right? So let's just say the field out of Salinas is the product's not bad. They got to go find maybe another field in Salinas, or maybe go to Gonzales or somewhere like that, which is 20 minutes away, or 30, depending on where you're going. And that it just throws a wrench into everything, right? So now it's going to take that much longer to harvest it. It's going to take that much longer to get to the cooler to cool it down. And that whole time the truck's just waiting. That's why a lot of the times, like the Monday loads don't even get picked up Monday, honestly. A lot of it is it's early Tuesday morning at like midnight, or Tuesday 8 o'clock in the morning, just because, Saturdays and Sundays, most people have the days off, right? So they're not even looking into it. So they come in Monday morning ready to harvest, like, so what happened over the weekend? Did it rain? Did it freeze? Whatever might have happened. So you have to go different aspects. So
there's so many variables. So we're coming up. A lot of people, I like to touch on what we always refer to as the death march, which is, between Yuma and Salinas and Yuma. So we're coming up on this Yuma season, which should start usually the second week of November, third week of November, right around there.
Right. Yeah, it depends. Some people move a little sooner, some a little later. But yeah, second week is normally the norm. Second, third week. So
yeah. So if anybody isn't familiar with that, basically everybody, so Salinas is the summer salad bowl. So most of your leafy greens that you're eating throughout the entire summer is all coming from the Salinas Valley. And then during the winter, when the weather shifts, everything moves over to Yuma, Arizona. So they're already planting right now in Yuma. First cuts usually that first or second week in November, like Danny mentioned, depending on who the shipper is. Some of them move early. But what's really cool is for about a week and a half, sometimes a little bit longer, They actually pick up all of their harvesting equipment on flatbeds, and they convoy all the way down to Yuma. And then they convoy all the way back up to Salinas in April/March, depending on the year, right? And so for anybody who hasn't seen it, it's actually super impressive to be able to basically take all of your mobile harvesters, put them on flatbeds, and move them. I don't know, what is that, 1,200 miles, 1,300 miles?
Something. It's
and just set up shop all over again. And they do this every 6 months, every single year, like clockwork. So it's really impressive.
Yeah, I know Taylor Farms, they do it, and they'll have everything loaded like Saturday morning. They'll finish harvest and loading trucks, and by Monday morning, within 48 hours, they've moved every piece of equipment from Salinas, drove it down to Yuma, have it set up so Monday morning it's good to go. It's down to a science. It's really cool. They sent us a few videos, right, fast forward and so forth, but just to get everything just back operations with the drive down there. What is it, a 10-hour drive one way, 8-hour drive, whatever it might be. And to make sure they're not missing anything, no bolts, no screws are left behind, no hoses, right, to make sure it's still operational. So it's really impressive. But yeah, they do that early November and again in April. So
yeah, it's crazy. When I first got into produce, I actually didn't know, really the splits between Yuma and Salinas and all the work that went into it. And now that I've been in it for long enough, it's absolutely impressive. A lot of
because depending on supplier, go for it.
Oh no, so I was just going to say, and that throws another wrench into when it comes to capacity for produce is like the seasonality of everything. You'd mentioned Texas, you mentioned Washington, you mentioned Idaho. Everything is so seasonal. It's not like I'm going to mention Smithfield Meats. We pick up a lot from Smithfield Meats for a customer. That's year round, right? Like it's the same orders every Monday, every Wednesday, every Friday, same location, same pick times, same delivery times, year round. And in produce, it is so seasonal. I mean, Florida season is what, 2 months?
Yeah, 3 months it's busy.
Yeah,
and then some little stuff here and there.
Yep. And Texas really kind of has 2 seasons. Nogales has 2 seasons, right?
Right.
And it's hard. It's very hard to balance your capacity throughout the entire year. You're basically moving people, from home to home. Like if you don't have a home there, you're not sleeping there,
Oh, exactly. And that's why onions is probably one of the worst things, because there's literally 4 locations we pick it out of. Right. So from now August until March, early April, we're either in Washington or Western Idaho. And then from there, we either go to California or Texas. And then from there, we go to New Mexico, and then we go back up north. Right. So we literally within 5 months, we're picking up in 4 different locations. So
you guys are running a lot of RFPs through the year then, right? Because you're running RFPs for every commodity every season, right?
Correct. So right now we're running 5 bids. We're adding a 6th bid right now just for Texas, Florida. So literally every 2 months we have a new bid going out just because of the season. I do like the Pacific Northwest bid just because like potatoes and apples don't move the whole year.
Yep.
But it's with everything else we're moving. So
it's crazy. So everybody out there who does your 1 or 2 bids a year, you guys got it easy. So
exactly.
Welcome to the produce world. This is what we're used to. We're used to bids every month, basically. So it's crazy.
Definitely. Yeah, because like on our dry frozen side, they do 1 bid a year. It's like 4,000 lanes, but it's just one big shabam within a month, 2 months, and then you're good for the year.
Yep.
Yeah, that is.
Yep. So what's what can you? So some of the audience is obviously going to be a lot of brokerages, a lot of newer people into the industry. So what's some advice you can give to some of those guys if they want to kind of cut their teeth in produce?
Probably the biggest thing, believe it or not, is be transparent in everything you do, right? Like we understand at times you're going to be held up by suppliers. You're not going to make on-time delivery. As soon as you know that, you let them know. So at least your customer knows if they have to buy a local product, it gives them a couple of days to find that product rather than the morning of. Another thing is loading. You got to be patient. You're going to have an ETA of products ready at 2 p.m. They might not get you in the docks at 10 o'clock at night, right? So those are probably the 2 biggest things. We know a lot of things we can't control. We can't control weather. We can't control flat tires, but we can't control communication, right? So that's one thing that we look into. And then at times it does get frustrating. I understand that you've been waiting a day and a half. You want to just load to deliver to get paid. But sometimes you got to keep your cool, be professional. Yep. Sometimes you can't be frustrated. It's not the guy loading you. It's not his fault, right? It's sometimes it was a product. Maybe it was there's a lot of humans in there, right? So there's a lot of fingers, and you can blame it on and push it on. So you just ultimately just have to take the hit and wait.
Yep. A lot of what happens in ag can't be automated as much as we want it to be, right?
Yeah.
There's no machines that are picking strawberries. Those are every single strawberry that you eat, when you buy it at a store or you eat it at a restaurant, that was handpicked by someone.
Yeah.
And, to your point, and people get sick, people call in, there's issues all the time. So, I mean, produce is just a different animal. It's a lot of fun, but it's definitely a different animal. So, but my good friend Chris Jolly, the freight coach, he's got a great podcast too. Him and I, every time we talk, he always tells me the same thing. You can have a bad day in logistics. You can even have a bad week in logistics, right? Murphy's Law. You could have 5 things go wrong in that 1 week, but the one thing you can never fail at is your communication. 100%. So,
totally right.
Yep. So I think that's kind of across the board, not just produce, but produce is so very timely and so very sensitive that I think communication has to be there. And it's also something that you have to have 24/7 coverage on. I don't care what people say. Like, you don't get loaded by 5 p.m. like you do at a normal shipper. That's just, like you touched on, it might be midnight. And if at midnight, all of a sudden your BOL showing, 20 cases short, and you don't have coverage to make sure that you guys need that product, or is it okay for us to bolt? Like, you're going to either be sitting with a claim because you bolted without permission, or, something else something bad could happen. So it is 24/7 operation, never slows down. There's a lot of crazy produce shippers that don't even take holidays off. Got Labor Day coming up on Monday. There's still going to be a lot of loading on Monday when it comes to produce.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If anything, it would be like a half day, which means they'll just load to like 4 p.m., 5 p.m., and that's it.
Yep. It's crazy. And then also like this, we always talk, we have a Washington team versus a California team, right? And even though they're both on the West Coast and they both operate on the same time zone, everybody up in Washington closes way earlier than everybody down in Arizona and California. So if you don't have your shit together and you don't know that, Apple shippers close by 5 or 7, and you're just used to loading at Taylor and you're used to loading at midnight, like, you're in for a rude awakening when you got to load apples a day late. So
yeah, it's definitely tough. But that's the beauty of it. It's demanding both mentally and physically, but when you're done, it is rewarding, right? So you get that out of it.
There's also less competition. I mean, there isn't nearly as many carriers that can haul produce well. So you're not up against the 3 million drivers out there. You're up against, I can't even remember the statistics. I remember it was like 18% or something of carriers and brokers actually haul produce. So
which makes sense.
Yep.
Because I know just the Sysco breakdown, I think our produce is only about 10% of all the total loads that we do.
Yep.
So
it's just a different animal, but well, cool. I actually didn't know that you were on the sales side for Sysco before. That's great.
I was for a little bit. I enjoyed it, but it was too repetitive for me, right? It's kind of the same thing, looking at numbers, and I'd rather do something like this, talking to someone, going out, meet someone, get to meet them face to face. But numbers I love numbers, but I want to see people as well, right? So it's the best of both worlds for me. So
this whole industry is built on relationships. If you can't have honest conversation with people and have a relationship with them, like, you need to know who you're working with, right? Like, everybody looks the same and sounds the same over email. So
it does. Yeah. And that's the biggest thing, at least for me, what helps me out with the position I have, because we always get put in tough situations, right? If it's a claim, if it's a bid, meeting your customers, right? Or meeting your carriers or whatever. Even if you just go and see them one time, or go time one time a year, just anything of that nature. So when you do have an opportunity or issue come up, like, it's easier to talk to them, right, Cody? So you guys haul for us.
Yep.
If there's an issue, I can call you anytime, and we both know I didn't screw up, you didn't screw up, but we have to fix it.
Yep.
So what's the best way we can fix it? I know I don't want to take the whole hit. You don't want to take the whole hit, but just meeting in the middle.
Yep.
And I think with the new generation that's leaving the industry, right? They're not having the face-to-face, communication like they used to. Everything's on text message or phone or email. They don't even know who their customer is, carrier is. They've been working with them for 3 years or 5 years. And I'm a little bit old school. My dad was in produce for most of his life. So back then, and being here in Salinas, old school produce is handshakes and last names. And okay, like, I trust you. You have my word. I don't need you to write, I don't need a signature on a contract. You gave me your word. That's good. I'm kind of the same way. And I think that's what we need more in this industry. right?
I agree 100%. I mean, I had just had a LinkedIn post not too long ago about the difference between meeting with customers face to face and meeting with them on a Zoom call to go over, a quarterly business review. It's great to have quarterly business reviews. Everybody wants to see their metrics, right? But at the end of the day, if you can't break bread with somebody and actually talk about like, where can we help out? Like what, where's your struggles? I mean, that really, as a carrier, as a provider, that's really what our focus should be on. It's not what we can do, it's what you need, right? That's the name of the game at the end of the day. And that's so much easier when you can actually sit down and have a beer and talk it through, like this industry is so stressful that if you can't do that and unwind a little bit and realize that we're all humans, like it's, what are you in it for? Right.
Yeah. It's not for you. And that's one thing, right? Some of my, driving companies come out, we'll go to dinner, have a glass of wine, have a beer. Now it's almost, I give them more respect once I have a glass of glass of wine or beer, and then I get to know the real them. It's not some salesperson, right? That you get an email, like it's actually a person and a name. It's just not a number. So,
yep. So everybody out there, I preach this a lot, especially on LinkedIn. Anytime you get an opportunity to meet your customers face to face, even if it's just lunch, that goes so far with building a relationship because all of us crave that human interaction. And Danny, you're absolutely right. Like this new generation does like to, they'd rather text than call. They'd rather, have a Zoom call than actually fly out there and meet their customers. And, I can tell you firsthand that you will be far more successful in this industry if you put people first. So
totally agree. 100%. I know when I first started this position 5 years ago, the carriers that call me, right, or come visit me or just anything of that nature, they've grown more with me than any other carriers I've had in my database. Just for that, right? I'm not saying I'm biased because they're there, but if it's split between, I already have that trust with them, right? I've met them in person. I know how they are, right? Their personalities. So it just helps push you, towards the side you want to be on. Ultimately, just get more business. So
building trust, man. That's what this is all about. Because to your point, like you call me at midnight on a Friday, and you have an ASAP load or something. One of our drivers screwed up or something. I'm gonna make sure I take care of that, and everything's gonna be squared away before Monday morning, and vice versa. If I need help on something, there was a load that something happened, I know you'll pick up the phone, and we built that relationship. We've been working together for 5 years now. And that's priceless. Once you get to that relationship with people, you realize that we're all in this for the same reason. We're all in this to win, right? Like we want to win, you want to win, we want you to win, you want us to win, because the more successful you are, the more opportunity we have, and the more successful we are, the more opportunities you have, because we're a great carrier for you, right? And at the end of the day, that's what everyone needs to focus on. The numbers will all be there, especially in produce. You got to understand like how seasonal produce that you do, but a lot of people don't. There's months where you just get your butt kicked, and there's months where you don't get your butt kicked, and you just have to balance the good with the bad. And you got to realize that sometimes you don't want to haul strawberries and cherries because they're so expensive. They're super sensitive, but guess what? You got to do it. Your customer needs you to haul a cherry load or a berry load, and he's going to hook you up with 2 or 3 easy loads after that. You just got to do it. Well, that's just how relationships are built. Can't have it a one-way street.
Totally agree. It is a partnership. So it's almost one of those, we help me to help you, right? That's how it goes.
Absolutely. Well, we're coming up on time here. We only got a couple minutes left. I usually like to first off, thank you. I know you're extremely busy. You have a huge job at Sysco, managing a lot of freight, managing a lot of carriers with not a lot of manpower. And that, corporate America, no offense guys, but you guys have a lot on your plate. So thank you very much for taking this half an hour and chatting with me, buddy. And you've been a great friend. You're great for the industry. You know more, especially like I said, I didn't even know you had sales experience. So like you got good 360 understanding of everything when it comes to this. So thank you very much for spending the time with us. But if anybody out there wants to get a hold of you, what's the easiest way for them to get a hold of you?
So you can go on LinkedIn, or you can just reach out to my email. I do have a cell phone. I can give you the information. We can post it, right? Somebody get a hold of me. Okay. That's probably the best way to get reaching out to me. But yeah, anytime, man. Definitely here to help out. This was fun. Maybe we could do it again sometime. So
yeah, absolutely. In fact, what I want to start doing is I want to get out to Salinas and see if we could do a field tour. I think that'd be a great podcast episode for a lot of people who've never seen what actually goes into making a salad, right? All of us see the end result when we go to Olive Garden, we get our never ending, pasta and salad. but a lot of people don't realize how much work goes into that to get that to that table. So I think that would be fantastic. And where you're already in Salinas and you know everybody in their neighbor, it'd probably be a great episode.
Yeah, come on out. I can definitely get a field tour with like Diorigo or Taylor Farms or Church Brothers.
Cool.
We'll deal with all of them, so just let me know.
Awesome. Sounds great. If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out. Thank you, everybody, for the questions and participating, and we will see you again in a couple weeks. Thanks for watching, guys.